Hi everybody, David Thompson here. I've got another talk for you because there's been some sort of emergent thinking going on, partially with what I do at work and partially what I do with the VR AR Association and the XR crowd. And I just wanted to share it with you as soon as possible. And that's namely around the use of digital spaces and the role they could play in the future of work. So inspiration for this is, of course, the work I've been doing with the Zero Event XR Crowd group, where we've been testing platforms to figure out what works, what doesn't work. That turned into some work I'm doing at Aviva, where I work, and also a podcast from Sam Harris and Matt Mullenweg, who is the founder of WordPress. And there's a really good free podcast from Sam Harris which talks about the future of work. It's really, really worth watching. So, many of us are in lockdown. Some of us are fortunate to have work where, digital collaboration tools allow us to work remotely. And I've been looking at, how those tools need to develop in order that we can be most effectively when we're when we're working from home, when we're not able to visit customers. So Aviva, a software company, we're not able to visit our customers. Our salespeople are not able to visit our customers. Our technical people are not able to visit customers to train or fix things in software. Of course, the cloud is partly helping us enable to deliver software to customers and to talk to our customers via video conferencing tools. But what we're realizing is that it's not possible to be, in all cases, fully effective when remote working. And I think there's some specific cases where digital spaces could play a role. So I've got a kind of explanation here, which is a graphic partially made by somebody called Greg Fodor. So thank you very much from Mozilla. I've kind of stolen and refactored some of the graphics he used in a presentation to Mozilla back in 2018. So today, basically, we have two people who are needing to work together, but they're not co-located. We use, of course, one of the devices they have. So they've got various rectangular devices, laptops, iPads, phones, even smart TVs potentially. And of course, these two people are not co-located. They're sitting at their kitchen tables in the laundry room, or if they're lucky, in a home office. But through the power of the cloud, we're able to share, what they're looking at on their screens in real time. And these days, with the sort of relatively powerful computing that we have, we can share videos, audio, and a PowerPoint, maybe even do a whiteboard session, Microsoft Whiteboard, or something like Miro. But at the end of the day, we basically make a little tunnel through the internet that allows us to share screen content, right? That's what we've got today. What I've realized is that if you have multiple screens, you can be much more effective. So you can have the videos on one of your screens, you can have the PowerPoint on another one, you can have Google Documents or a OneNote where you're maybe sharing, common meetings of minutes. So it is possible to be effective with these tools, but there's a couple of kind of things which are effectively missing from this way of working. So first of all, I'm going to categorize this, it's not an industry term, as video tunnels. So basically we have content on one person's screen, content on other people's screen. We can share that with internet video streaming, essentially. And that does work for, enough use cases. It allows us to communicate very well. So a presentation to many works very well. The whiteboarding tools that are out there are pretty good at allowing us to whiteboard now these days. Co-authoring documents, so doing a OneNote or a Google document shared, does allow us to work on document content pretty well. But one key thing is that there's no presence. So these people feel like they're sitting at home in their home offices. Another thing is that the agency is somewhat limited, so we can mark up somebody else's screen. So if you give me control of your application, I can even control it. I can do the little pen and mark it up. Microsoft Whiteboard and Miro and tools like this are certainly going in the right direction to help us do really collaborative work. So I think today, if you want to run a workshop, you're best with something like the whiteboard tools and sharing a Google document for notes and doing a Zoom call. There's not really anything better than that today. But at the end of the day, we're missing a few things. So we're missing real agency. So the real ability to do things, even just to turn our head around, to move around a space, which are things we have, of course, in the real world. And we're missing presence. So when you do a workshop with your colleagues, you might have all these tools to allow us to collaborate and document what the work is, but you will not remember that workshop like you would a workshop where you've physically been present. So this is why quite often we move people off-site so that they're in a place where they're not distracted by their office, but they're present with each other. And that's why also, workshops work with smaller groups, 100 people, so that the people can really be present, see each other's body language, but also do things like, sticky boards on a wall, whiteboarding, brainstorming, all these kind of things that have some kind of physical presence associated with them. So we don't have that today, unfortunately. Of course, the near future, people will have Apple augmented reality glasses, Microsoft HoloLens or equivalent, or a VR, headset. And today with VR, we can put people digitally in the same room. So it's possible to have co-location presence where you feel like you're in the same room and you remember that as if you have been there with people. So the illusion is big enough. And of course, we can bring work into that room so people can collaborate. And there's two kind of levels to this. So you could bring in a document, an Excel sheet, which wouldn't be a great use of this kind of spatial technology. But if you're an architect or an engineer, bringing in a 3D model into a digital space is a great way to collaborate. So much better than doing that on screens in our experience. And of course, you have hands. So you have full agency. So you have either hand tracking like the HoloLens or the Quest, or you have hand controllers. So you can pick things up, you can point at things, you can, of course, move yourself around. But it's even possible today to take, for example, a digital pen, pick it up off a table and pass it to somebody on the other side of the table. And if you extrapolate that scenario, it's possible to build a house, a ship, a power plant with the tools in these applications today. So XR spaces have the promise of full presence, so you remember as if you were there, and full agency. And something else sprung to mind. So one of the benefits of working from home and using video calls, especially in my situation with a young family, is that you have maybe less presence with your colleagues, but potentially have more presence with your family. So there's a big advantage to that. But there's this kind of awkward situation today where we're trying to be present in a Zoom meeting. So we're trying to concentrate on the content on our little rectangles, but your kids burst in the room. And then you suddenly have to be present with your kids. The XR spaces doesn't solve that. But when you're in your headset, it is, you're going to get a space. You're going to lock the door and say, I'm present in this meeting in VR or whatever it is. But it means that, of course, you can't be present. But there's pros and cons with that. So you get a private space. You get a space where your kids are not there, where your cat's not going to run in front of you, and you focus on the work. So there's a big advantage there in terms of engagement with these tools. So it's no surprise that, of course, these tools for events and collaboration are exploding. So just a few examples here. AltSpace, of course, from Microsoft. Engage VR from Immersive Education Holdings and HTC now as a stakeholder. Spatial here in the middle, the Wild Glue. There's actually quite a variety of tools and platforms to try and facilitate remote working and remote events with immersive technologies, XR technologies. And they're all focused on this thing. So getting engagement by combining presence with agency. This is a graphic from Charlie Fink's latest book, with I believe with his students from his latest course. And these tools are really coming along. Some of us are assessing them in the XR crowd, in the VR AR Association, but they're still very much at the beginning. But the major problem is that not everybody has a headset, a virtual reality or augmented reality headset. And even then, not everybody, if they had one, I believe wouldn't be comfortable using it. I do believe that if you gave everybody a headset, they would eventually find the value of it and end up using it more and more and more, which is my personal experience. But the fact is, not everybody has one today. So my kind of question is there value in a halfway house solution? So take your users with their screens, with their rectangles, give them access to virtual or digital space on the cloud. Allow them to share their work in that space. Again, document, video, PowerPoint, 3D model, you name it. Give them an avatar so that they can be somewhat present in that space. So they can move around, so they can see the other participants in that space. And of course, it goes without saying that in a digital space, you can already have an AR or a VR user who's going to have more agency and more immersion, clearly, in presence in that space. And effectively, what the screen user is getting is a shared representation of that digital space on their screen. Excuse me. So I believe this is got potential because you get a little bit more presence. So in the beginning, of course, you're just looking on your screen. You've got the same problem as a Zoom where people come in. But the more you spend time in a digital space with other people, the more you start to remember it as a real experience. So you remember if it was an office space, if it was a meeting in a space station, for example, or if you were in a movie theater together. You do remember these things in a different way from a purely two-dimensional video conferencing experience. And in some cases, you have more agency. So the scenario about taking a pen and passing it to somebody is possible when you're using a desktop or a normal screen. And there are other advantages. So you can share multiple screens. You're not just restricted to one tunnel from one person's computer to another. You can actually share multiple webcams, multiple screens in a space, a digital space for all to use. So I've been looking at this with the VR AR Association, the XR Crowd, and in Aviva. And basically, I think there's a lot of potential for this. And we ended up using, at least at Aviva, something called Mozilla Hubs. That's Mozilla, the people who make the Firefox browser. Because they have this free platform which you can use. It's a preview, actually. But what we found is that we can make spaces. So we've got full autonomy to make our own spaces and make that environment exactly as we want it. But very importantly, we can, once we've made a space, we can share that space with anybody instantly as long as they're connected to the internet. So instant access to the spaces, no installing, no plugins, anything like that. The other thing is that it works literally on any device with a compatible browser. So it needs to have a WebXR compatible browser. But we've had sessions where people are using this on a phone, on an iPad, and on a normal laptop, of course, and of course on a Mac as well, which many of the VR applications don't support. The whole thing can be deployed. It is on the cloud, the preview version, if you like, the free version, but it can be deployed within a corporate cloud or a private cloud, or effectively branded with your own branding. And the really interesting thing that starts to happen is that we start to realize that what we're creating here is digital real estate. So I'm just going to go off on a side branch here. So real estate, of course, being one of the really important assets of a company today, whether you're a startup or you're a FTSE 100 company like Aviva, you basically, if you're the startup, you want a room where you can collaborate together, sit together, easily have discussions and solve problems. If you're a huge company, you want a beautiful corporate office to bring your customers to, close to an airport, close to a nice hotel. You want an attractive working environment for your colleagues to feel productive in, to feel like they're in a city which has attractive living, quality of life, these kind of things. But on the other hand, as we're discovering now, real estate is extremely expensive. It's a very large proportion of large companies' operational expenditure. Even if you invest a lot in your offices to make them a comfortable working space, you're still in an environment, and this is paraphrasing, is it Matt Mullenberg from the Sam Harris blog? You're in an environment where you can't control the environment very well. So whether it's the heating, whether it's the smell of your colleagues' foods, the office is always going to be a compromise. And yeah, it's huge cost, and there's a commuting. There's a variety of issues with physical real estate. So what WebXR and tools like Mozilla Hub allow us to do is to create digital real estate. So real estate where you can create persistent rooms, and you have to consider these rooms as a 3D website. So it's a website which a customer or a colleague can simply visit and self-serve. So they could consume content, wander around that room, look at PowerPoints, find information, or this is a key thing and a key difference to a website, is that a room can be hosted by human colleagues. So you can have somebody in there to greet people, maybe at certain times of the day. You can have people to guide people around. You can have people do demos. There's really a huge realm of possibilities here. And then the other thing we started realizing, this gets back to digital real estate, is that, well, these are all rooms on the cloud. If we can scale our cloud infrastructure, we can have one room per customer. So we don't need to restrict ourselves to one room which is shared by everybody. We can simply spin up another instance of a room, invite a customer to it, and then that room becomes their persistent space on our cloud for them to interact with. So the concept of digital real estate on the web, on the metaverse, if you like, is really a thing nowadays. And there are, of course, other potential tie-ins here to the enterprise software that large corporations use. So because everything on a WebXR page is effectively an object in the web, theoretically, of course, it's possible to track what people are looking at. So because they have the ability to move their head, and how much time they are engaging with it, if they're flicking through slides or if they're just pointing their head at it. So there's a lot of potential here, I think, for digital spaces as a part of the tools that we need to do our work. I don't see them replacing 2D in terms of delivering content. If you want to watch a PowerPoint, or if somebody wants to deliver a video like this, then streaming is a perfectly acceptable medium for that. But I do think that as people get used to using 3D spaces, digital spaces on the web, that we will see different ways of working. So I'm not looking for likes here, but I would really like input. I'd like to start a discussion. So please don't feel shy to comment on this video. Thanks for your attention, and that's all for now. Bye-bye.